So nice. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy that you're all here joining us today. I'm Melanie Crader. I am the Museum Director and Curator of Visual Arts here at Guildhall. And this conversation is in conjunction with Almond Zigmund's Waiting Room exhibition at Guildhall. So if you haven't seen it, please try to see it after our conversation. As such, I would like to thank the lead funders of the exhibition, Jill and Darius Bickoff, Caroline and Robert Taubman, as well as our Friends of the Museum supporters. So I am so pleased to be moderating today's conversation with two incredible women whose creative practices intersect across design, architecture, fashion, and visual art in powerful and compelling ways. So first, I'm going to briefly introduce our two guests. So Lisa Perry is a curator, designer, and collector, and founder of Onna House, a curatorial platform and gallery space dedicated to supporting women artists exclusively. Rooted in East Hampton, Onna House champions the visibility and the legacy of female creativity across generations and disciplines. Almond Zigmund is an artist whose sculptural installations reimagine architectural space through bold geometry, saturated color, formal and informal tension. Her work lives at the intersection of perception, disruption, and design, and has been exhibited widely. I think you'll find all of those elements at play in her Waiting Room exhibition. So what makes today's conversation especially exciting is the collaborative relationship that Lisa and Almond have, which started with a site-specific installation by Almond at Onna House. So, first question, Lisa, how did you meet Almond?
First, hello everyone. Nice to see you. Thank you for coming. Oh, Mike. So it was kind of an interesting way. Some of you may know Russ Steele. He's an antique dealer in town. And is Russ here? He never shows up to anything, but we love him anyway. Russ is a legend in this area, and he started, during COVID, he started showing the work of local artists in his store. And he had visited Onna House and absolutely loved it. And when I first opened Onna House, I was showing the work of Japanese artists and artists from Asia. And Russ said, you know, there are a lot of talented artists right in the Hamptons. And I actually, not that I didn't know it, I just hadn't focused on it. So I said, great, you know, let me take a look. And he said, come to my store and I'll, you know, show you some of the work. And he said, or I said, it was going to save me a lot of shipping costs from Japan. And that was also very compelling. Anyway, so I went and Almond's work resonated with me. And I just decided that we would meet and have a conversation of maybe what Almond could do at Onna House. And shortly after, I think I met Almond at the house, and I said, why don't you do something for that wall over there? And she said, great. And then as I saw, I spent more time with Almond. I liked her work, but I really fell in love with the person. So I think that happens a lot with artists, and you know, when that does happen, it's very special, and it happened with Almond and me. And today, Almond's installation is the only permanent installation at Onna House. And I hope, if any of you have not seen Almond's gallery here, she has an entire gallery that shows the depth and breadth of her practice, which is everything from her paintings to furniture to, you know, books and flower pots and everything you can imagine. And I call it Almond's Joy. Anyway, please see it if you haven't already. That was how our story began.
Yeah, like Lisa said, Russ and I, Russ introduced Lisa and I, and Russ had told me way before we actually met that you had come into the store and were interested in my work, and you loomed large in my imagination way before I met you because of your career as a designer, and that was something I look at a lot of fashion. Um, your work, Rudy Gernreich's work, it's very influential in terms of the movement, the color, the form. And so when he told me that you were interested in my work, I was beside myself with excitement. So when we actually met and I saw this project that you were working on, and I became that much more excited because Onna House, it was a completely new venture for you as far as I understood, or what I knew you to be associated with. And, just envisioning a place where you wanted to not only restore an architectural gem and save that from being completely eradicated, and a gem with such a great history in the arts as well. And if you guys don't know what it is, you'll find out on your next tour. But then to kind of fill it with art made exclusively by women and, combine art and architecture and design. That clarity of vision was something that was so exciting for me to see. And then on top of that, your supportiveness in being able to play within this space, was an amazing gift as well. So that's, yeah.
So I think this is a great transition into talking about space, specifically architectural space. So Almond, your interventions disrupt or reframe built environments. Please tell us briefly about your Guildhall exhibition, Waiting Room, and how it reflects your spatial and formal concerns.
Okay. I will use this as an opportunity to thank you and to thank Guildhall. Melanie and Philippa and Claire, who is the visual arts team here, Melanie you're the director and the curator, you couldn't have been more supportive in developing this project, and I am so grateful. And really everybody at Guildhall working together under Andrea's leadership. But I mean, I've been, I've communicated with Anthony, Amy, Andrea about this project, and everybody's been involved, and I feel incredibly supported and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have done this, so thank you all. Waiting Room was conceived as a sort of immersive environment that was to accompany Functional Relationships, which is the show of artist design furniture next door. And it was conceived, or it was kind of envisioned as a multi-pronged thing. It was envisioned as a way to get people to come and experience the museum in a different way. But it was also envisioned as a way to curate many people into a space. So the pots and the books and, there's a lot of things within the space that are not actually things that I made. There's about 5 other artists in the space, and so it was a wonderful opportunity to kind of act as curator myself, but, I sort of felt like it was playing with all of my friends. I was able to call people up and say, would you, lend me, it really felt like a moment of play. Just to touch on the name Waiting Room, it sort of embodies what I imagine it to be. It's this kind of, it's an active gesture, whether it kind of plays on waiting room. You're not waiting, you're not passively doing something, you're kind of actively engaged in something that maybe is an unknown. When you wade into something, you're not necessarily sure what it is that you're wading into, that you're stepping into. So I kind of envision it as a space that there are possibilities abound, and you can kind of, create your own adventure. So within that, there are many things that I actually did design myself and make myself, but it was really, it embodies a collaborative sort of effort, which I think is what I want the room to be. I want the room to be kind of collaborative and active.
And there are a series of participatory programs.
Yes, there are.
That you've designed in order to continue that collaboration, which
Exactly.
is very appreciated. So, speaking of collaboration, and also again back to space. So, Onna House did start as a restoration project. So, can you talk a little bit about the beginning and how Onna House has evolved since then?
Sure. So this was during the pandemic in 2021. I was looking for a creative space. I had ended my fashion brand, but I still wanted to be creative in some way. And we all remember how bleak it was, during COVID. And I used to be embarrassed to say I spend a lot of time on Instagram. Now I embrace it because it is an incredible platform. And there was a call out on Instagram by a wonderful, he's somebody called the Creative's Agent. He looks at mid-century homes all over the country. And there was a call out, and it said, historic home in East Hampton, can somebody please save this home? This home is in danger of being demolished, and can someone save this home? And when I saw the pictures, it was very compelling, and I said, this is interesting. This could be that space I'm looking for. And so Richard and I drove out on a cold winter's day from the city, and I pulled up to this house, and I got this it was a weird feeling, but kind of a beautiful feeling, and it reminded me of the house that I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. And I don't know, we go with our instincts a lot, and I just said, this is it. This is, we need to buy this house, we need to save this house, as we know so many mid-century homes in this area and all over the country and world are demolished to, make room for bigger homes. And so I just said, this is it. And so the home, which is built in 1962, some of you may remember the names, Robert and Ethel Scull. They were very, well-known early pop art collectors, and they are the ones who commissioned this home. And so they had everybody in this house from Warhol to de Kooning to Rauschenberg and Johns and all the greats that they collected. And I was looking at the history of this house, and I saw that Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan had done an event, a women's equality event there in 1970, and that really sealed the deal for me. So we decided to embark on this project of a restoration. I wanted to keep it as true to the original as possible. And then midway through the restoration project, I decided, I don't know, it was that light bulb moment where I said, this country is a, disaster for women. We're on the brink of overturning Roe v. Wade. I've been a champion of women's rights my whole life. And I said, you know what? This is the place that I can focus on helping women. And it was how this Onna House was born, and it combined all of my loves of architecture, fashion, art, and helping women under, one roof. And I decided Onna means, it's O-N-N-A, it means woman in Japanese, and so it is a house to celebrate women.
Well, we're all really grateful for that. So we're going to move on to color, which is really important, as you see with the images behind us. So color is something that both of you have been, that's important in both of your practices. So Almond, in your practice, color is more than a surface. It often functions like structure. And how do you decide when and how to use it?
Thank you for that question. Oh yeah, that's pretty colorful. Yeah, that's a good image to kind of start with. So I'll just go back a little bit. When I first started my when I first started studying, when I first decided to be an artist and I went to art school, I was deciding between being an artist and studying philosophy. And Adrienne Piper was somebody that I was really influenced by. And if any of you don't know her work, just look it up. She's amazing and very different from my practice as it kind of evolved. But I mention that because the sort of problems that philosophy grapples with were really important to me, and they still are. And when we were talking about color and talking about this, preparing for this talk, I was just thinking about, the idea of color and, as a kind of foundational tool and as a conceptual tool. And it's something that's very important to me, and it's something that I think about a lot, but it's not something that I think about when I'm actually working. My relationship to color is instinctual, but also very intentional. So I'm not, going through a color book or creating a palette and thinking about transgression or power but I am very intentionally using color to create response and to kind of, shape people's sort of understanding of a space or react in a way. And so I do see it as a kind of, foundational and conceptual tool that is very important to me, but it's not something, that just to say that I don't, it's a very instinctual sort of relationship that I have to it first.
It's really intuitive, but
Yes,
with the understanding that there's so much power behind color.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
those relationships happen with color that you bring to the studio. But color is often seen as political, so how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's absolutely political. I mean, there's a long history of color being maligned. There's obviously, we culturally assign so much, to color, either associations or value. And so I think, I don't shy away from that. I embrace that. We were talking about the color pink before, which is a color that you were so associated with. I have two very precious, hot pink Lisa Perry's in my closet. And, you kind of have to own hot pink when you walk out. It's not something that, again, is sort of top of mind in everybody's, in the vernacular, but there's always going to be a judgment made based on the color that you wear, I think. As a woman, wearing a certain color, even wearing a certain shade of lipstick, there are these subtle sort of shifts in perception that people will kind of assign to you based on, what it is that you're wearing. And so I think I don't shy away from that. I try to actually lean into it, and the color that I use is saturated, it's bold. I like to put, colors together that cause friction, that are optically difficult at times. And I think that, again, that serves this greater purpose of just trying to get people to stop and renegotiate their own relationship to whatever it is that they're looking at, to the work, that they're standing in front of, or the room that they're standing in, and yeah.
Great. So Lisa, we've talked a little bit about your fashion brand and color, and then you have shifted your ideas about color or your use of color in your practice. And so can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I was going to. Almond just mentioned the hot pink, and so my fashion brand was inspired by the great design of the 60s, which was known for bright colors, especially this hot pink and other neon colors. And for 10 to 12 years that I had my brand, I would wear something of my own design every single day, and I completely embraced color. And I became known for that. So since I started Onna House, I'd say my color palette has gone from bright to brown, which is it's kind of surprising to people. It's not that surprising to me, because I feel that the kind of the way I either dress or the colors that surround me are actually more part of my DNA than the bright colors, which is interesting. And I feel that maybe I'm more in touch with the earth and nature. Certainly at Onna House, you've been seeing images of the beautiful surroundings of Onna House and that natural environment. And I feel that every time I walk into Onna House, this calm, comes over me, and it's this very zen environment. And you don't really want to see hot pink in there. It doesn't work. Things change. People evolve, and we go through different phases and stages, and so that's kind of where I am now. You're going to see me in brown and natural and cream. That's the deal. It's who I am.
Thanks. Okay, so we're going to shift a little bit back to power dynamics with Almond.
Almond gets all the technical, hard, difficult, brilliant questions.
That's why I have my notes.
So your installations often play with visual attention, which we've talked about a little bit, and perspective. So how does that formal language speak to a broader questions of perception and power?
Yeah, that is a good question. A lot of the installations that I've done or have been asked to do have been in public and have been in spaces that are already sort of, the use has been dictated already. And I always feel like, because I'm an artist and I have the sort of luxury of not having to show up at a municipal building or at a school or at an office building every day, that I can kind of be the sort of, fairy interloper to kind of remind people that they can still, have fun and play. And I think that as artists, our primary job, or one of our primary jobs, we're disruptors. We should sort of walk through the world challenging assumptions about structure and the sort of, already held beliefs. I think that what I like to do with the work is to kind of a visual, I don't want to say assault because that sounds aggressive, but I like that idea. I like that idea of sort of things, derailing. And so a lot of the work that I've done over the past 5 or 6 years, maybe 10 years, has been engaged in that sort of disruptive, kind of dialogue, whether or not it, I think we've been looking at pictures. There's murals on the street or in different office buildings or at the embassy. So I kind of like to sort of creep in the cracks of these sort of structures and remind people to, engage in play and but also to kind of reorient themselves within the context or in relation to the surroundings that they're in. So it's a renegotiation, disruption.
So what specific to waiting room because it's here and we can talk about that. So we talked a little bit about how when you're in that space you are renegotiating and you're kind of it's not necessarily linear or it kind of decenters you or throws you off balance a little bit and you have to navigate through the room. So the example I used is that, like, for example, you put a plant right in the middle of the room, so you have to, like, it forces you to walk in. It not only confronts you, but it, like, forces you to walk around it. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that the whole sort of room is destabilizing in as much as, what is this place? It's not a gallery with, paintings on the wall. There is paint on the wall. There are paintings on top of that paint. Who made this? Is this Almond? Is this Sabra? Is this, who? I don't understand what's going on here. Can I sit on these chairs? Am I allowed to touch these books? There's a whole litany of kind of questions that are posed by the space. Like, why is this painting, why is it melting off the wall? Why is there vinyl on the floor? What is this thing in the corner? What are these animations? I mean, to me, it all makes a whole lot of sense, but I've actually, one of the things that I've done during the duration of this, of the show is sit in the space and watch people come in and sort of watch what they do. Some people jump right in. Other people you can sort of see them, kind of like walk around, look around, touch, and I'll just jump in and say, yeah, you can sit down. It's been really interesting to watch people's reaction, and I actually think in some ways because I want people to sit and I want there to be engagement, there are some sort of things that I have, I've made a chair, and that's a very specific signifier for sit in me. So I'm kind of playing with signifiers, but also maybe a kind of skewing them ever so slightly.
It is kind of fun to watch people be really have trepidation not sitting in the chair, even though they're on the floor. And there's a sign that says "Please sit," But so that's also fun for me. But it also is reminiscent of your own domestic space. So so there's comfort there and familiarity. And then there's the
I
kind
think
of
that's
play.
actually part of the disruption is
Yeah.
like this idea of bringing, a domestic space into an institutional space, to kind of blur that line. People act very differently in their own domestic spaces than they do in, in institutional spaces. And if we can kind of blur that line and, create a sort of, a kind of a zone of comfortability that people can actually be a little bit more relaxed within an institutional space. What are the possibilities for connection? What are the possibilities for conversation? How can we connect, sort of, I don't know, over that sort of rigid institutional, what you think of when you're in a museum or...
So we are going to move on to legacy and what's up next. So Lisa, you recently had a seasonal gallery for Onna House in Palm Beach. What are you envisioning for Onna House's next chapter? What are you envisioning for Onna House's next chapter?
So I think the concept of giving unknown women artists a space and a platform to show their work is essential. I'm looking out, I see, several of the artists that we've shown at Onna House It's so important. I feel like one of the very special things that we've done is we've also created a community and a place for artists to come and to hang out and be a part of something that is growing and evolving and changing. And I think that we've seen now, as I'm sure so many of you, there's a show at MoMA right now, the woven histories. There are a lot of, there's a huge movement toward embracing, showing women in museums and galleries. And so I think that, yes, I created Onna House, but I've certainly, not the first one to, to realize how important it is. And I think that, one of our goals going forward is changing the mindset of either that women's art is less valuable, it's less, whatever, desirable in a collection. We totally disagree with that. We also at Onna House, we really embrace the art of craft, which we're also seeing, that movement of ceramics and textiles and things around the country and the world. So, the tides are changing, and I think that what people have come to us now and asked, which is, something very, very flattering and fantastic, is that we can help them curate their collections. And we did that for one person in Palm Beach, where she built a new apartment, and every single piece in this apartment is by Onna House artists. And it's a commitment that is really a beautiful thing. We hope more people, you don't have to do your whole place, but at least, start to embrace, bringing women's art into your homes, art by women. So the other thing that people have come to us for, which is amazing, is somebody is building a restaurant and they want us to do the art for it. Which is great. It's a work in progress. The conversations are starting. We would love to curate art for a hotel, which would be fantastic. Anything that we can raise the visibility for, women's art by women is our goal. And, whether it's, a spa, a chic building lobby, really the sky's the limit. It's just engaging in these conversations where people are going to say, we love what you're doing, we see how it can look, in a home, in an environment, which is one of the things that Onna House helps people, realize is how to live with this art. And so we're open to, having all of these different conversations around curation of different places. And so if there are any real estate developers or restaurateurs in this audience, you know where to find me. And we really do believe the possibilities are endless for the Onna House community.
It's really exciting. So Almond, would you like to share what you're working on next?
Sure. Although first I wanted to say, I think that's one of the reasons that I've just loved and where our sort of visions kind of run parallel is this idea of this sort of, combination of art, architecture, and design, and the sort of mutually beneficial sort of way in which you present all of those things. They're non-hierarchical. I think that in some ways that is a feminist ideology embodied, and I really appreciate your approach to curating in that way and taking on these larger and bigger projects with a vision rather than just a sort of a placement of an object, that it really is this kind of fully sort of considered world that you want to bring. And I really appreciate that. I am working on public sculpture. So this is something, I shouldn't say it's my first, but it's the first in New York City, and it's the first sort of Parks Department sculpture, which is kind of a big hurdle because it's working with a municipality. It's not a private company. I did work with the embassy, U.S. State Department, which had its own sort of set of interesting problems, but this will be a lot more visible. I don't know how many people are going to be in the U.S. The U.S. Embassy in Paraguay. So this will be a more visible, and yeah. So that's what I'm working on now. It's very exciting. Yeah. So stay tuned.
Well, thank you both. We're going to take a few questions. So we have a couple of mics that are coming around, so we have time to take 3 to 5 questions. Let's see, just raise your hand and then we'll bring a mic to you.
That's not fair.
Oh, there's one back there.
This is a question for Almond. I will say I've admired your work for a long time. What's with the plants? Like, and UNLV, you were doing these sort of whole room installations, and there were plants, and your work has obviously evolved so much, but there's still plants.
Now the plants have reappeared. That's actually a super good question. Thank you, Jason.
It's a plant.
So the first time Jason mentioned UNLV, I went to graduate school in Las Vegas, and when I was traveling across the country, I became really sort of interested in these spaces, which a philosopher named Marc Augé, he called them non-places. And they were basically these spaces that didn't really change ever, like your 7-Elevens are a non-place, your airports are non-places. There are these spaces that are sort of nondescript and that you pass through and don't really have any connection to, but they're incredibly familiar. And I began to see that in these spaces, there were always plants, or often. Oftentimes you'll be going through a jetway, in an airport in some, city that you don't even realize you're in because it's a layover or whatever, but there's plants. And I just began to think about plants as these sort of signifiers of comfort and home and life and warmth. So, it's in some ways it's very much a kind of intuitive addition to. Again, we were talking about the domestic space, to kind of to create warmth. And when you create warmth, you're kind of alluding to a domestic space, which we are all more comfortable in than we are in these kind of like, liminal non-spaces. So, so when, Melanie asked me to develop this space, it's really one of the first things I asked about was, can I have plants in there? And yeah, so that's what's with the plants.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the plants because I think there's only one that's real. Some of them are artificial plants.
Yeah. Andrea, can you tell us all what the Dalai Lama says about artificial plants? Exactly. And so because we are in, and I'll repeat that for those that didn't hear, the Dalai Lama says artificial plants are fine because they remind us of the real thing. And I think that's correct. I mean, I will say that there's something a little kitschy about artificial plants that I sort of lean into. But that being said, artificial plants have really made great strides, and I think that they I think that they kind of look amazing, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with them. I have another one on order, so next week there's going to be a fiddlehead fern. That's
So I have one personal thing to say about plants and spaces. I worked at a corporation for 8 years, and there was a bridge between the parking garage and the building, and they only changed the plants twice a year. And I was always so excited when the plants changed. 8 years walking to and from. Yeah, yeah. So the plants made a difference, I will say. They make a difference. Okay, so next question. Seth.
Hi, thank you so much, everyone. Oh, it's really been fabulous. I just it seems like there's a little, at least for me, an elephant in the room that, which is how we transform space into place, which I know is something we're all interested in, and how do we do that? We do it by bringing in people's meanings, our meanings, not just Almond's meanings, but all of our collective meanings. And especially when you got to the plant, I've been trying to think about a way to bring to this conversation that what Almond is doing is bringing us her things, but then we're bringing our meanings to it. And some of us can find our meanings easily in the waiting room. And others of us maybe find it more exotic or more like Las Vegas sometimes, I think, all right? And maybe then the plant becomes incredibly important as something. You keep saying the word domestic and making home, and I keep thinking maybe it's a way for many humans, me in particular, to attach and bring in my own meanings into the space to fill it, to make it more mine, and to make it more of a place for me to be, so that it isn't just Almond's space or waiting room, but it also becomes my meaningful place of location and being.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and I think that when I use the word warmth, I think that's what that implies, is that it's there's a lot of things that I think, especially in art, that people don't trust their own intuition or their own reaction, and yeah, plants are very much universal. That's not something that needs translation. It's not something that needs yeah, it's something that's kind of immediate.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for your enlightening discussion. I was just wondering, was it by luck or by chance that there seems to be a communication or conversation between the two galleries? Maybe, Melanie, I would ask you that question. The exhibition in the other gallery as well seems to be related. I'm sorry, it's just this idea of chairs, artist chairs, design. I was just wondering, was that by chance or by good luck, or did you curate that in?
So what I wanted to do when I invited Almond into creating the space is that it was important for me to have a space where people could interact with the work or kind of live that designed environment, which functional relationships, artist made furniture, that particular show is about how artists extend their creative practice to every aspect of their daily life. And so that's why it was important for me to figure out how to bring that for the visitor, and without it just being something that was on display, something that you could truly kind of live that environment. So there's two aspects where you'll see that. One is with being able to put that theory in practice, which is what Almond did and in her room. And then the other is that we commissioned Lindsay Morris to take photos of many of the artists' homes, their personal domestic spaces, and that's projected in the functional relationship side. So, and the idea with that was so you could see a lot of the furniture in situ, and also it was a way that I was hoping to encourage people to actually sit on the Chamberlain couch, because you can, if you take your shoes off, you can sit there and watch the slideshow. So I think that all of those visual kind of connections are there, and I'm glad that you could see it in the show and the two presentations. So thank you for that.
And just to draw in Onna House as well, I mean, I certainly have been influenced by the way that you combine furniture and art. And so, you know, when Melanie asked me to create this room, you know, it was all but impossible not to think about how you approach, you know, creating these spaces, which are very much spaces that you can hang out in. And those were some of the first conversations that we had about, like, how do we actually get people into this space to have conversations, to hang out, and, you know, you've done that often.
Thank you, and that's why I lent you my table that's in the
That is
room
very
and
right.
my chairs. So
That is very right. And along those lines of, yes, it's a group effort.
you can all check those out after this talk.
But Lisa, you also do show, when we're talking about craft and women that you have presented, you also have a few people that do furniture design as well. Yes. So, and I think that that's one of the things that about, you know, artist practice, so many artists are creating functional objects that, and you certainly show a lot of artists that do that as well. So.
Somebody told me when I had my brand, somebody said to me once, like, if you're a designer and you can design one thing, you can design anything. And I kind of thought about that, and I think it's true. It really doesn't, you know, it really doesn't matter. If you love to design and you have an inclination toward design, you know, I think it's a part of you.
Well, and the multidisciplinary nature of artists, I think, is what we're seeing at play. And going back to the hierarchy aspect of the conversation, I'm really appreciating the fact that these kind of hierarchies are being, you know, dismantled, and people's practice, it is multidisciplinary and it is quite expansive. And highlighting that in an interdisciplinary institution like Guildhall, or like, you know, presenting it at Onna House, I think is really important for artists. So.
Regarding the idea that as an artist you push and you interject into spaces, be they be actual or what am I looking at? Sort of social, but that actual spaces can also be social. I guess it's like a sort of a mental creation of space also. There's that. This is not just for the people on the stage, it's for everybody. If you want to push back, does anyone have a problem pushing back against not just the concept in quotations of hierarchy, male domination, whatever, but pushing back against something that's on lots of flags right now, like the concept of being quote unquote woke, religious, whatever. Is there anything that in some ways you will not push back against because you've accepted yourself that you want to, in some ways, make people comfortable in whatever this current group speak happens to be? And I only ask that because as an artist myself, I push back against everyone. I don't care if you're black, you're white, you're Christian, you're whatever. If I find any sort of ridiculousness coming to me where it's under the guise of oh, it's really good and we're trying to help people, but actually the bottom base is suppression. Does anyone or most people agree that you should not allow that to, in some ways, smoothen your existence within the social milieu, as one might say? If you're talking personally about pushing back against stuff, everything is a target. And I'm just curious if people feel that everything is a target. That's my question, as an artist.
That's a big question, Andre.
You know how I am.
I'll try to address it just in terms of my own work because it's hard to ignore politics right now. It's something that is ever present every day, and it always is, but right now it seems like a weight and a responsibility. For a very long time, I did not want my work to speak specifically about me or my experience or who I am culturally, my race, my gender. It was not about that. I have come to understand that everything that we do has a political weight, regardless of whether we want it to or not. But what I have always wanted to do in my work is to find a sort of common ground, a common humanity that we all share, and that is, I don't believe that everything is politics. I really don't. I really believe that the life that we have to live exists outside of politics as a structure, and I choose to kind of believe that art can exist outside of that structure, and interact with it if whoever is making that art feels that's where they need to find their material, but that art can talk about so much more than those structures, and it can talk about a shared humanity, just a lived life experience, and I kind of, it's not a settled question for me, but it's something that I think about, but I really, one of the things that we did in the run-up to Waiting Room was with a group of mostly women. There was one man that came, but it was interesting to me that it was mostly women. We created a hook rug together, and it was something that we did for about 6 weeks. It was about between 6 and 9 hours every week, and it was an activity where a group of people came together and we were working on something communally, and it felt like a political gesture because it was, because we were in community and we were working towards a purpose. And maybe that's, you could push back that was political, but just the fact that we were all there together, and it was something I think that was meaningful. It was definitely meaningful for me, and it was, I think, meaningful for some of the people that came as well. And I don't know, I guess it was sort of a form of resistance in as much as we were engaging on a different level. Like, we were just engaging differently than most of us do, every day. And I'm not sure that really answers your question, but I tried.
I think that one of the things that, it's not actually political, but if you can imagine that every day from behind the scenes, I'm asked, when are you going to allow male artists in here? And, while you're being exclusionary, the thing that you're, you think that people do against women, you're doing against men. And I have complete conviction to say, yes, I am doing that, because men have had their shot for, I don't know, 3,000 years or however long, and it's time. And I will never, ever, ever have a male artist work at Onna House. There's no reason to. I'm happy to have men visit Onna House. You can come, you can enjoy, you can have tea, you can have chocolate, but your art will never be at Onna House. And it is political, and I get pushback all the time, and I am steadfast in my conviction that I am doing the right thing.
Okay, we have one. Have time for one more question, and that's we have three. Sorry.
So you're, David, you're both proponents and advocates for mostly what I see abstract. I'm just wondering what your relationships, both of you, to representational work, whether it's something you've had in your past, made in your past, collect in your homes. What is your relationship to representational?
That's a good question, David. David is one of the men that comes to every single thing at Onna House that you could ever have. He is, and he's never asked that I show his work. He's a great champion, and we're thrilled to have you as part of the community. It's a really good question about representational work. I feel that I think it's a moment where Onna House, the things at Onna House, whether it's a textile, a ceramic, whatever it is, it's less painting now than anything. And I think it's the best way to think about that for me is, again, like you're saying, talking about intuition and something that you feel. And I feel the work that's at Onna House now, and I don't know how long that'll last, but it just feels like it's part of the vibe, if that makes sense. And so this more, representational, more realistic, whether a still life or whatever it is, it's just nothing against the work, and there's very beautiful representational work. It's just not what Onna House is about at the moment. Is your work representational, David? Is that?
My work, I guess, is decidedly abstract, but I actually don't think that there's anything. I don't think that abstraction is a thing. I think any image is representational of something. It's not, it's not photorealistic, but a lot of my work, I think about the body a lot. I think about scale and proportion, and those things are both based on the body. So the work that I've been doing, I think for the past, 7 or so years, that they kind of start with collage, and I'm always thinking of the body. They are figures, and you can see sort of, the piece at Onna House is called Dresses and Urns, and they very much are figures that are, combined with sort of these vessel-like shapes, and I think vessels are also basically figures or parts of figures. So I don't believe in a sort of clear line between representation and abstraction. I mean, it's a spectrum, and yeah.
Well, we are out of time, but I want to just say thank you so much to the two of you. This has been great. So much fun. And then also thank you all for coming today. I have a few more announcements. Please always check Guildhall's website for all of our upcoming programs. We have a full slate throughout the summer and year-round, but there's a lot going on. And I just wanted to mention that Almond has 3 more programs, one on June 21st, one on June 28th, and then one on July 12th, which is towards the end of the exhibition.
Can I just say there's also just the ongoing project of latch hooking in waiting rooms. So there are squares there that people can take. There's yarn, there's instructions. If I'm there on Thursdays and Fridays. If you want to come in and get a latch hooking lesson, that's a kind of ongoing project that you can engage in at any time.
It's exciting. And then also we have our first Guild Hall. I'm going to plug the merch. Okay, so we have our first Guild Hall
Tony,
artist
stand up.
artist collaboration.
Aren't you wearing the sweatshirt?
Yeah, here you go, Tony. I know. So yes, so Tony is
please.
wearing the beautiful Guild Hall Almond design. We have limited edition sweatshirts, so if you're interested in one, you can purchase one at the coffee bar. And then we have one more other program that's related to functional relationships. Living with Chamberlain is a recent book that has come out about living with art, specifically John Chamberlain. And on June 22nd, we'll have a program with that about that as well. So thank you again for coming, and I really enjoy seeing all of you. Take care.